This is Talking Football with Two Bald Guys. I'm Adam.
I'm Tony.
Tony, little Eye of the Tiger there first.
Yes,
I know
yes.
it comes from the Rocky song.
Classic Rocky,
Yeah.
Rocky movie song.
Played it
sure.
because some of the top teams in the SEC didn't really have the Eye of the Tiger this weekend.
Oh, I thought you played it because my Sooners are playing the Tigers
yeah.
this weekend.
That could be two. Some of the big names struggled a little bit over the weekend. We'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, I had Tiger, great song. It pumps you up a little bit.
Yep, and I think they made that song specifically for the Rocky movies, but it definitely works for a lot of stuff.
It works for a lot of stuff. All right. Like I said, I'm talking football, Two Bald Guys, and we are part of Elevation 5280 Sports. That's e5280sports.com. Like I said, check out our pod there. Go there. Even if you don't want to listen to our pod and go somewhere else.
Listen to the other podcasts.
The other pods are great. But listen to ours, listen to the other ones. There's a bunch of great stuff there. And then also we are partnering up with Happy Nuts. They just sent us a little care package. It is Happy Nuts.
Jingle bells. Your balls smell. And this is going to be the gift pack that will prevent you from smelling.
Yeah,
because there's some cream in there. What else?
Anti-shave. It's an anti-shave comfort stick, which that's great for guys,
especially
for us down here in Florida.
Yeah, that's right.
And then there's some comfort cream. It is a lotion that turns into powder. And I mean, you know what? You're not trying to sound too much like whatever, but it's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, and it also comes with Santa's ball sack as well in there. And yes, it is. It's red and it's shaped like
it's an ornament. So, anyways, but
exactly.
But it's a good. I know we joke about it, but it's a good thing. You can save 20% with us. Plus, you can stack it on top of the sales that are happening. We're taping this on Black Friday, and they have a lot of good sales. So go out, use our code, save 20%, and get some stuff for the men in your life.
Yeah, Two Bald Guys 20. Use that code, save yourself some money, get some good stuff. It's Christmas time coming up. Like, get your guys some nice stuff so they smell good for you.
Or get it for yourself, whatever you want. All right, Tony. I know I alluded to it to begin with, but what do you think about the SEC?
So SEC homers, as we will call them, or the SEC fans, and I think you called me a homer.
I did. I 100% called you a homer.
I can't hate the SEC as much because Oklahoma's in there, but the SEC homers will tell you that the SEC is just beating up on themselves, right? They're all great teams,
right?
Isn't that's what they're going to say? They're all great teams. They're just beating up on themselves. But if they're going to use that logic, then they need to use that with the Big Ten as well. Ohio State beats Penn State. Ohio State beats Indiana. I mean, you know what I mean? Oregon beats Ohio State.
Right.
We could use that with almost every single conference, and no conference is beating up on themselves more than maybe the Big 12. I mean,
is true.
To be honest with you.
But it gets to a point, it's like, okay, at what point does the SEC stop getting the benefit of the doubt that they're just a great conference? And maybe they're a bunch of good teams, but not great teams. At what point do we...
Somebody else from another conference, and I know Michigan did it last year, but we need to have a run of SEC teams not either making the national championship or definitely not winning the national championship, because every time an SEC team makes it or wins the national championship, they believe that there's 6 teams in the SEC that could win it all. So, I mean, let's say Georgia wins it this year. Well, who beat Georgia this year, right? Bama. Oh, well, Bama could have won it all. I mean, that's how they think. That's how they think.
Right.
Whether it's right or wrong, that's the SEC mentality there, is that if our team from the SEC wins the national championship, well, every other team in the SEC that played with the winner or beat them maybe is just as good, and that's just not the case. I think it's wide open this year.
I do think it's wide open. I don't think there's a team that has just proven it to be the best team. Every time we think there's a team that's going to be really good, they go and lose. We thought, okay, maybe Bama had figured it out, and then Oklahoma beats them. Okay, maybe Ole Miss is good because they beat Georgia. Well, then they flip around and lose to Florida. It's just not. That dominant team, and we're going to see Texas plays Texas A&M this week. Have they figured it out? Like, who's going to Georgia's already in the SEC championship, but they're playing Georgia Tech this week. Like, what do we think?
Georgia Tech 7-4, like, they're not that bad. Like, Georgia Tech can hang in there.
Yeah,
can they beat Georgia? Probably not. But then you got your Big 12 teams out there. Colorado, who you thought was maybe the front runner to win the Big 12, fools around and loses. Yep. So to Kansas, which Kansas, a healthy Kansas team right now, might be kind of dangerous.
They are dangerous. Like, a healthy Kansas team is playing how we thought Kansas was going to play.
Correct.
Because we talked about it. When we went through our playoff picks, we don't want to rehash them too much because they were bad at points. But we talked about Kansas, maybe screwing around and being a team that could be up there because they had not Jayden Daniels.
It's like Jalen Daniels.
Jalen Daniels, something like that. And we thought, this team, they threw up a lot of points last year, and they're just not doing it this year.
Well, they came out, they looked pretty good. They had some injuries, and now that they're getting healthy, they're beating teams.
Right.
I mean, they're beating teams that 3 or 4 weeks ago you would have said no chance. And I think Kansas and maybe South Carolina are 2 teams right now. I wouldn't want to play them. I wouldn't want to play those 2 teams.
And right South Carolina plays Clemson this week, so
that's going to be
interesting because Clemson's in a spot that they're in the playoffs, or a chance to get in the playoffs. So, should they be afraid of South Carolina? I think they should.
100% afraid of South Carolina the way they're playing right now.
Yeah. So
the Big 12 is a mess. The SEC is turning into a mess. The Big 10 is a little more clear cut now. ACC is, again, the Clemson loss against South Carolina won't hurt them in the conference, but the ACC seems to be Clemson, Miami, and SMU. Don't forget about them.
Oh, yeah. SMU's already clinched a spot in the ACC, so it looks like they're going to play Miami or Clemson probably, I think, without, looking at it right off the top of the head. I know Clemson's done with the ACC. So what's the ACC standings? Pull up the ACC standings.
Let me pull up the ACC standings real quick. I think Miami, obviously, I think if they win out, they'll be in. But right now, SMU is leading, then Clemson, then Miami, but it's only because Miami has one less win. So, but the overall win-loss record, Clemson has two losses total. Miami only has 1. So I don't know if there's going to be a tiebreaker in there or not.
And they don't play each other, right?
Clemson, they won't play each other.
Because Clemson's done because they play South Carolina this week, and that's not easy. Yep. Who does Miami have this week?
Miami has to play are they off this? Miami has Syracuse. So Syracuse 8-3, not awful, but Miami will probably take care of business. Well, I say that, and then who knows? They fool around and lose like they did to Georgia Tech.
Right.
SMU has Cal.
Yeah.
It's not a gimme. They're not gimmies, Arizona State, Arizona State. Actually, Arizona State's playing really well too. I wouldn't want to play them right now either.
Yeah, Arizona State, they are – the Big 12 is an absolute cluster right now. Like, it's just –
there's a whole mess of teams in there that you could say could go in there. Arizona State's leading it. And then you still got BYU. You have Iowa State and Colorado all sitting with 2 losses in there. Like, they're all just clustered up in there. So something needs to happen within this week or so to try to figure this out. So if all those teams somehow pull out wins,
I forget.
Who knows? Because Arizona State has Arizona. It's not an easy game. That's not a gimme game. Iowa State has Kansas State. Again, not a gimme game.
Oh, wait, it's a Big 12.
Big 12. Kansas State could beat Iowa State. Can Houston beat BYU? Probably not, but you never know. I don't even know anymore.
Okay, so I looked this up the other day, and I'm gonna pull it up right now. Okay.
Okay.
The 4 teams that are tied right now are Arizona State, BYU, Iowa State, Colorado. Yep. So we talked about that. We covered. If all 4 teams win, it would be Arizona State versus Iowa State.
Really?
So Arizona State, BYU, Iowa State, Colorado, they all win. It's Arizona State versus Iowa State.
State has the tiebreaker. Okay.
If exactly 2 teams win, then obviously those 2 teams go. And this is where now starts to get a little crazy.
Lose.
If Arizona State, BYU, and Iowa State win and Colorado loses, it's still Arizona State and Iowa State.
Okay.
So if Arizona State and Iowa State win,
it's over. It's them too.
Well, yes. Except
there's an exception.
Colorado wins and BYU loses. If Arizona State and Iowa State win, they're probably in. But if Colorado wins and BYU loses,
does Colorado sneak in there?
It could either be Colorado versus Iowa State or Colorado versus Arizona State.
Wow.
Based on how Texas Tech does.
What? Who's Texas Tech playing?
Well, it says if Texas Tech wins and Baylor wins and Cincinnati wins, the Big 12 championship would be Colorado versus Iowa State. If Texas Tech wins and either Baylor or Cincinnati loses, it'd be Colorado versus Arizona State. If Texas Tech loses, the Big 12 championship would be Arizona State versus Iowa State.
Okay, well, Baylor has Kansas. So good luck, Baylor, right? And then apparently Texas Tech, because they have a win, it's because they beat Arizona State, right? Texas Tech beat Arizona State, if I remember correctly.
It's just bonkers like that.
But we said that from day one.
Oh, we did.
The Big 12. We just got the teams wrong. we just got the teams wrong. We thought Colorado might be in there. We definitely didn't have BYU in there.
We definitely didn't have BYU. So, we thought that it would be.
We thought maybe Kansas could make a little run.
And we thought Utah because.
Yeah, with Cam Rising healthy, you think Utah could have made a run in there.
Right.
So Texas Tech somehow is deciding the Big 12. They play. They play West Virginia.
If certain things happen, yes,
they play West Virginia. It's not a gimme game. It's not a gimme game at all.
Right.
Kansas plays Baylor, so if Baylor's a factor,
it's absolutely wild. Like it's so much easier than the other ones. Like we'll go to the ACC ones.
The other ones are what, 2, maybe 3 teams, maybe 3, because right now in Big Ten it's Oregon and Ohio State.
All right.
I mean,
probably we'll get to the Big Ten in a second. The ACC right now, Miami clinches a spot with a win.
Yep.
Period. If they lose though, it gets interesting.
Clemson has to be in because they don't have a
Clemson
conference game this week.
If Miami stumbles and loses against Syracuse, that opens the door for the Clemson Tigers in a spot.
Oh, well, SMU, I forgot about them. So it's Miami SMU right now.
Right.
So SMU needs to lose to get Clemson in there. Or Miami lose. One of those two need to lose.
Yeah, that's it. Miami wins, they're in. Miami loses,
Clemson's in against SMU.
Against SMU. SMU's already clinched. There we go. That's a lot simpler.
That's way easier.
So if Miami wins, the
when
Big 12, win you're in. The Big Ten, Oregon's already clinched.
Yep.
If Ohio State beats Michigan, which I want to say Michigan can beat them, but
I see this Ohio State-Michigan game a lot like I saw the Alabama-Oklahoma game, and I was dead wrong on that.
Yeah.
We can talk about that in a minute.
If Ohio State wins, they're in. If Ohio State loses and Penn State wins, I think Penn State's
in over Indiana.
Yes, I think the only way Indiana gets in is if Ohio State and Penn State lose. Now, let's just say
I don't know who Penn State has this week.
Penn State has Maryland, I think.
Oh, okay.
Or Michigan State.
I think Maryland, you're right. It's Maryland.
Or it might be Maryland.
I think it's Maryland, you're right.
Here's the thing with this. If you're Indiana, at this point, yes, you want to play for a Big Ten championship because that's a goal.
You do, yep.
But do you really want to play for the Big Ten championship?
Probably not. Because
right now they're 11-1, and with all the chaos that happened last week in the SEC, Indiana's in. As long as they don't lose to Purdue.
Which they probably won't
lose. They won't lose. Purdue's not good. I saw them in live. They're not good.
Right.
If Indiana wins, I think
they're in.
I think they're in. You can't
have to be in.
I know all the questions about Indiana, and obviously Ohio State handled them pretty well, which we thought could happen. Indiana, you can't keep an 11-1 Indiana team out, right? With the chaos. Because Alabama with 3 losses is not getting in over
them. Not over a 1-loss.
South Carolina has 3 losses. Right. They're not getting in over them. You know what I'm saying? The ace, the Big 12 is a mess.
That's a mess.
Even the team that goes to the championship game probably has 3 losses. You can't put them in over Indiana.
The team that loses the Big 12 championship will have 3 losses. So they're out.
So you have to, who's the teams that are directly behind Indiana right now?
Boise, which
we're predicting because either they win the Mountain West or they're out.
Right.
So
they're all done.
Boise's not a factor for Indiana.
Clemson, who can still win the ACC even with a loss to South Carolina, that would have 3 losses if they lose to South Carolina this weekend. Would they be out if they lose to South Carolina and don't even play for the ACC championship? They have to be out, right?
They have to beat South Carolina.
So now you're looking at Bama at 13 and Ole Miss at 14. Might be able to sneak in. Bama might be able to sneak in here.
But here's the thing: you cannot put Bama in front of Indiana.
No. They won't put them in front of
Indiana. And how many losses does Ole Miss have? 3 or 2?
Ole Miss has 3.
So you can't. Ole Miss and Bama are not factors in Indiana. Okay.
South Carolina has 3. Arizona State only has 2, but they're going to play
Big 12 champion. Okay.
Tulane with 2 losses.
Well, wait. Did they lose last night? Because they were playing Memphis last night. I can't remember.
Other than that, I think Tulane might be your only potential team that could sneak in. They lost to Memphis. They're out. They lost to Memphis. You're out. That's 3rd loss for Tulane. They're out. I'm telling you, Bama and Ole Miss are going to sneak in this thing. Clemson's going to lose. And they're going to sneak in somehow.
No.
Tennessee's going to sneak in then.
Well, Tennessee, yes. Okay, so
because it's Texas, Tennessee.
Here we're at right now.
Texas, Georgia.
Oregon. I don't know. I don't even know if Oregon needs a win anymore. Oregon plays. To be honest,
they play Washington.
And then they're going to be in the Big Ten championship game with 2 losses. Drop them all the way out. I don't even think it would.
Boy, it would be. It would be
but
bad.
Let's just say Oregon takes care of business against Washington, and then the Big Ten championship game matters, but it doesn't matter. It matters for seeding, but it doesn't matter to get in.
Correct.
So Oregon's in. All right. Let's say
Ohio State with a loss in the Big Ten championship.
That's
2
tricky.
losses.
That's tricky, and we're going to get to that in a second. All right. Let's say Oregon wins out. They're in. Let's just say.
Yep.
Okay.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. You have Texas versus Georgia. Let's say Texas beats Texas A&M. So you have Texas versus Georgia. The winner's in. So there's 2 teams. So let's say let's say Texas gets their revenge. So we have Oregon and Texas. There's 2 teams, okay? Now, I get it. Georgia, Ohio State, either one of them can win. Penn State, probably not going to screw up. Let's just say Ohio State beats Michigan, so Penn State doesn't have to play in the Big Ten championship game. They have 1 loss. They're in. There's 3. Notre Dame, as long as they don't screw up against USC.
Which,
you never know, but probably I think they could probably afford a loss too and be okay.
With 2 losses.
So there's
2 loss Notre Dame.
There's 4 teams. Tennessee only has 2 losses. Now they play Kentucky or Vanderbilt. As long as they avoid the Vanderbilt bug, they're not playing the SEC championship game, so they're only 2 losses. There's 5 teams. Let's say SMU in the ACC or Clemson. But let's just say SMU. Let's make this easy for a second. SMU would be 6. Indiana would be 7. Let's say Boise wins out. There's 8. There's 4 teams to pick from.
So you're saying a 2-loss Miami team is out, or are they in? Because they lose in
the
ACC
I'm just saying that they're losing in the ACC championship.
Right. That's 2 losses.
So there's 8 teams. Okay, now Miami. If they make it to the ACC championship and lose, I think they're in.
Okay.
So there's 9.
I would agree.
There's 9. Ohio State. If they make it to the Big Ten championship game and lose, if they don't lose to Michigan, they're in. There's 10. Now, if Georgia,
you got a 3-loss Georgia.
Here's the thing. Let's say Georgia beats Georgia Tech, but they go and play Texas and lose to them.
Right.
That's 3 losses. But they made it to the SEC championship game.
And you're going to put Tennessee in, who didn't, but only has 2 losses. Are they rewarding teams? I know they're rewarding teams for winning the conference, but are they rewarding them for just making it? Like, does Georgia go in over Tennessee?
See, because
who won the head-to-head?
That's what
Georgia did.
Here's where you're at. Is Georgia beat Tennessee?
Georgia beat Tennessee this year.
If you go with what they did with the 4 last year with Bama getting in because Texas got in and Texas beat Bama.
Yep.
I mean, that's the only reason they got it. So
and now you're looking at there are a couple 3-loss teams.
Here's where you run into.
They have to.
You want to make your conference championship
for sure.
Because if you win, you get a bye, especially in the big ones like the Big Ten, SEC, ACC. The Big 12 might be out. Right, but in those 3 conferences, for sure, you want to be in the championship because if you win, you get a bye, and a bye matters.
Oh, for sure.
But do you penalize Georgia for having to play in the SEC championship game and getting the loss? Tennessee didn't.
And they're going to lose to a team they already beat.
Right.
And they beat Tennessee already. You keep them out? I don't think you can. I don't think, even with that 3rd loss, I don't think you can keep them out.
Here's the only thing.
I want them out. I don't want them in there. I don't want them or Bama in there.
Here's the only thing I think keeps Georgia out is they lose to Georgia Tech and lose the SEC.
Yes, 100%.
Because then you could be like,
that's 4 losses.
Okay, cool. You're 9-4.
That's 4 losses. Get out. You're out.
And you've lost to
put South Carolina in ahead of them at that point with 3 losses.
Yeah, right.
If South Carolina beats Clemson, that's a pretty good win.
But see, at that point, if Georgia drops down to 4 losses, you have to entertain the thought of Bama making it if they beat Auburn.
They're at 13.
Bama has 3 losses, and one of their wins was Georgia. But then you say, well, Tennessee beat Georgia, and then you have all that stuff. But Tennessee beat Bama. You have a little triangle going on there, and who do you let in?
We're going to see who the committee favors if that scenario pops up. They're going to favor Georgia. I already know it. They're going to take a 3-loss Georgia over a 2-loss Tennessee would be crazy.
Yeah. I tell you who, on a different scale, the Big 12. The Big 12, for a minute there, it was a little shaky if the Big 12 would make it.
At
all, because
they're ranked so low.
Arizona State right now is the team that's ranked the highest in the Big 12. They are 16. The team that was right below them was Tulane, and they had talked about if Tulane goes and wins the AAC championship and we're 10, I guess they would have been 10-2.
Yep.
No, they would have been
10-2 because they're 9-3 right now because the standings probably aren't updated.
Oh, they would have been 11-2 had they beat Memphis. Memphis, they would have been 11-2, and they could have jumped. Well, if let's say Arizona State lost, does BYU jump Tulane or does Tulane stay ahead of them? And people were starting to wonder, would the Big 12 be shut out?
I don't think you could do that.
But Tulane lost, and that's all gone now.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter because the next group of 5 team in there is UNLV, and they have to play. They're either going to lose it to play Boise State in the Mountain West. So
and they're not going to jump up far enough to
they're not going to jump. They won't jump a Big 12 team. They're not going to jump over the cluster that's the Big 12.
BYU, Iowa State, and Arizona State all have to lose somehow.
Yeah.
Which
it's possible.
Never know.
Now, here's where things get. I mean, worst case scenario for the committee Oregon loses to Washington.
Yeah.
And Ohio State loses to Michigan. And Penn State loses to Maryland. And Indiana jumps in.
Indiana's
and let's say Indiana beats Oregon. Ohio State's not even in the championship game, but they have 2 losses. They lost to Michigan. Texas loses to Texas A&M, but Texas A&M gets in, and they beat at Georgia. Now they've got 3 losses. They're in. Notre Dame loses to USC. The ACC, Miami loses. Like, with what happened last week in the SEC, all that stuff's not going to happen, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that a few of those things happen.
Clemson could lose. Clemson could lose this week and somehow still make the ACC championship game. They have 3 losses. They lose the ACC championship game. They're out. But they win that thing. They got 3 losses. They're in. But now you're going to put maybe a 2-loss Miami team in there who lost the championship game. And if you look at the current playoff bracket, the committee right now, Tennessee's in, Georgia's in. Like, so they're already putting those 2 in there, and they're going to have to play each other according to the current.
Well, and if you look at the current one, it's what you don't want, because a first-round matchup is Tennessee-Georgia.
SEC doesn't want that. Yeah.
Right away is the SEC doesn't want it either. Right away, that's a rematch. The other one is Indiana-Penn State. Now, that is a Big Ten, but they didn't play this year.
Correct. So I wouldn't mind watching that.
So that would be okay. But the Big Ten and the SEC do not want that.
No.
They do not want one of their teams going down in the first round against another one of their teams.
No. They want to spread that out a little bit.
If they have to play in the first round, they want to play against a different conference.
Right.
So they don't have to worry about it. Like Ohio State's playing
Arizona State.
Now, here's the other question, too. And somebody poses. Is getting the 5th seed better than getting the 4 seed?
If you look at
the bracket,
if you look at the current bracket, you play the Big 12 champion, who is the lowest ranked of all the conference champions, and then if you win that, you get the Group of 5 team. Which, let's be honest, Boise's not awful, but would you rather play Boise, or your other 3 options are Miami, Texas, and Oregon?
Right.
It's kind of setting up to the 5 seeds. Not a bad place to be. I don't think Ohio State's they're there right now, but I don't think they end up at the 5 seed when it's all said and done, because things are gonna be a little bit crazy, because Georgia and or Texas are gonna have a loss in there. Maybe that might be the only team. Have a loss.
Here's the thing. Right now, Ohio State's the 5th seed, and deservedly so, because they're actually number 2, I think, in the bracket.
They're number 2 in them.
But
yeah,
they would, if they lose in the Big Ten championship game to Oregon, they're going to fall a little bit, I think.
Should.
But then again, if it's a close game again, they may stay right there at 5, because
what I don't want to have happen is Ohio State fall and end up playing like Indiana or Penn State again. That I don't think the Big Ten definitely doesn't want that.
I want Ohio State to fall to have to play like
Texas, Georgia or Tennessee or somebody, right? Don't you want them to play a super tough SEC team?
Like I said, as much as I
even Notre Dame
want the Big Ten to do better than the SEC this year, it's not Ohio State. Like not Ohio State.
Anybody but Ohio State.
Oregon, I don't love Indiana. I mean, I like the story of Indiana, but I don't love Indiana, and I'm not ever been a Penn State. But Indiana, Penn State, Oregon, go win.
Go do your thing.
Ohio State, you can lose.
Get out of there.
First thing. And it would be amazing if they lost to Boise State.
Or Arizona State.
Arizona State. Or the Big 12 champion, yes.
That would be,
yes.
That would be crazy. Yes. But they do get to host. And that, as you've brought up many times,
that's the other thing. I want the SEC
part.
schools to come north.
Yeah.
I want them to play at Indiana. I want them to play at Penn State.
But right now you're looking at Tennessee going to Georgia. Big deal. That happens all the time. Right? Indiana going to Penn State. That happens all the time. SMU going to Notre Dame. I know SMU's in Texas, but okay. So the home field advantage in that first round probably benefits Penn State, if anybody.
Did anything in the rankings really shock you, make you angry? I wouldn't say angry, because our teams aren't in there, so it's not really angry. But is there any glaring things? Because I honestly am looking at it, and there's not much.
Bama fell, but not as far as I thought they would.
Right.
Probably because teams like Ole Miss. And Ole Miss lost.
Yeah.
If Ole Miss wins, then Bama doesn't. Bama is sitting. They're only one spot away from getting into this top 12 thing, and they're going to put Bama in if they can even just get close. If they even have a chance to put Bama in, they put Bama in. If Ole Miss wouldn't have lost, I think that Ole Miss would have been up there higher.
I think the team, they don't have an argument because they have 3 losses, but the team that's got to be sitting back at the early part of the year and be like, oh my gosh, it's South Carolina. because they lost to LSU and they had them beat, and I think they had a pick six and it got called back.
That's right.
For a penalty.
That's right.
Which I didn't actually see the play, but everything I've read anywhere says it was a bad
garbage
call.
penalty.
And then they had Bama dead to rights,
Yep.
and then they fumbled the ball, and they literally fumbled it away. I mean, not quite as bad as Oklahoma fumbled it away against Missouri, but they have 3 losses. Even if they get one of those, they'd be 9-2 with a game against Clemson. If they win, they'd be in.
Yep.
They have to be sitting there thinking, "What if?" Because even with the Clemson win that puts them at 9-3, it puts them on the edge. But they lost to Bama. They'd have to jump Bama. I don't think Bama's going to get in.
They need a lot of help. But remember, if they beat Clemson, I think that drops Clemson down out of the top 15.
Yeah.
They need that help
there.
Here's
what South Carolina needs to do. They need to win Clemson. That would jump over them. That's one spot.
Yep.
They need Bama to lose to Auburn. That would jump them over another spot.
That can happen.
And I think if they beat Clemson, they would jump over Ole Miss because Ole Miss plays Mississippi State.
Who's awful.
Who's bad.
Yep.
I think Ole Miss jumps over all 3 of those teams, and that would put them at the 12th spot. But
sitting there.
The Big 12 is behind them, and they would jump over them.
True.
So they also want Vandy to upset Tennessee.
Which you never know. You never know.
And then maybe some chaos with Miami. Who's Miami? Did you say who's Miami playing?
Miami has somebody not good, I believe. Syracuse. 8-3 Syracuse.
So if they want Syracuse to pull that off, so teams that South Carolina is rooting for, they want status quo in the Big Ten.
Yes, everyone just take care of it.
Pretty much because, I mean, maybe, Indiana losing to Purdue would help them out. But besides honestly, the Big Ten just kind of winning helps them, I think. Because,
realistic, though.
But then they're going to root for Syracuse against Miami. They're going to root for Georgia Tech over Georgia.
Alabama to lose to Auburn.
And Vandy over Tennessee. And then all of a sudden,
they're in.
They might have a shot.
Might get in.
I mean, why not? I mean,
their resume is not that bad.
Especially if Texas A&M beats Texas, they have a win over Texas A&M. I mean,
right.
South Carolina has won 5 games in a row. Now they have lost Ole Miss and they have lost Alabama, so that would be the tough one.
They blew out Oklahoma. They beat up Texas A&M pretty well. They blew out Vandy, whose people are struggling with,
and then they beat Missouri
and Wofford. But
yeah, in the SEC.
But I think South Carolina is playing well enough right now that if they happen to get in, I wouldn't be super upset about it.
No.
I think that they can be competitive for sure.
I tell you what, nobody wants to see them.
No.
Playoffs. I mean, they whipped Texas A&M. And like I said, they had Alabama beat. They had a bad game against Ole Miss. And they had LSU beat.
They whooped up on my Sooners.
They did whoop up on
that game was over before it started.
It was bad. I think you guys got 21-0.
It was 5 minutes in. It was 21-0. I was like, okay, do I switch back to the Nebraska game? Or?
All right, let's talk about some of these games that are coming up. Some of them, like Boise State plays Oregon State. Like that Oregon State started the year okay. They're
5-6.
bad. Boise State's an 18.5-point favorite. Do you think Oregon State keeps it close?
No, I think Boise, Mr. Heisman winner himself, is going to have a big day, and he's going to cement himself with that Heisman trophy.
Ashton Jeanty should win the Heisman. And listen, Travis Hunter is a very good player at Colorado. Shadir Sanders is a very good player at Colorado.
Great players.
But if you put their
John
stats
Gabriel's
up,
great.
It seems like the Hunter argument is, well, he plays a lot of snaps. Cool. It's awesome. Great job.
Awesome.
Very good player. Deserves to be drafted high.
Apparently, he's not even on the Jim Thorpe Award.
Right, which is ridiculous.
That's kind of crazy.
But what Ashton Jeanty's doing is just stupid. It's like, take him off that team, and they are not. They're 10-1 right now with the 3-point loss to Oregon.
Right.
You take Jeanty off the team, they're 500. They've had some close games, and that just shows you how much he's helping them carry.
He literally, you can kill the clock with him.
Mm-hmm.
He gives you big runs for touchdowns. He's a different level guy. I'd like to see him in the playoffs, see what he can do against. I know he had a great game against Oregon. I want to see him go up against maybe a Penn State defense or something like that. Let me see what he can do against those big teams.
All right, Oklahoma State plays Colorado. Before we get to that real quick,
Oklahoma State.
Would you like to see Oklahoma continue the rivalry with Oklahoma State, even though
yes, Bedlam's awesome.
Yeah.
Bedlam's awesome. That game is one of those games where it doesn't matter. Your wins and losses do not matter.
I mean, you think about it. Other teams from different conferences play each other right now. Yeah. Georgia's playing Georgia Tech. South Carolina's playing
Oregon State play each other.
Yeah, play each other. And South Carolina and Clemson are playing each other. Why can't Oklahoma State figure this out and play each other every year?
I don't know. Put it in the non-conference. Like, you're playing Texas. I get it. That's a rivalry. But Bedlam, awesome. Bedlam is awesome. I almost like Bedlam more than the Red River Shootout because, Texas is the big rivalry. But the Oklahoma State rivalry, it's right up there with the best of them. I love that one. But, yeah, figure it out. I don't know what you have to do. Put yourself on the non-conference schedule. You know what? It's going to help one of your teams because typically Oklahoma State's not 3-8. Typically they're at least 500. So that would only help Oklahoma. And if Oklahoma State happens to win, that'll help their resume as well. But they got Colorado to deal with this week. I don't see Colorado having much of a problem in that game. I know they're coming off a loss, but Oklahoma State's been bad.
I mean, we say that, but we also thought Colorado shouldn't have much of a problem with. Who did they lose to? I'm drawing a blank now all of a sudden.
Everybody. They lost to Nebraska for some reason. Kansas. I mean, we thought they might lose to Kansas, but K-State. They lost to K-State. That one kind of surprised me a little bit.
Yeah.
But they've struggled. Like, they struggled against Baylor. Like, they got beat up pretty good by Nebraska, who's barely just bowl eligible. So they have looked – their defense is playing better. Obviously, they have a good offense, but Oklahoma State's in trouble. And it's in Boulder. Colorado 16 points. I think that's too high, though.
It's one of those weird ones because Colorado's can get going.
They can.
So
not that much though.
Not that much.
I don't think they're going to go that much. I mean, Okie State, puts up 48 points against Texas Tech. Then they scored 13 against TCU. Like, they're in the game most of the time. They just can't pull it off. I mean, they played BYU tough. They only lost by 3. So they can play with Colorado, and I think they will for a little bit. Colorado pulls away on that one.
All right. Mississippi State, Ole Miss. Ole Miss, I mean, we talked about them a little bit. They are 25.5-point favorites. Do you think Mississippi State can keep this close enough?
Not at all. Mississippi State's bad. They're bad.
They are bad.
They're not good. Mississippi State, no chance. Ole Miss blowout.
So you think they cover?
They'll cover.
I think Ole Miss is going to be in a situation where they want to prove a point.
Trying to impress some people, yeah. They need to. If they want any chance to get in at all, they need some help, and they need to be impressive.
Right, they need to be impressive, and I think they're going to be impressive. All right.
Georgia Tech, Georgia.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
Georgia Tech is not awful at all. They're not bad at all. They can play. They beat Miami already, right? They came out and beat Florida State at the beginning. Remember when we thought that was like, oh my gosh, yeah. Georgia Tech beat Florida State. What has happened? 24-21. Then we realized that Florida State's awful. They did lose to Syracuse in a close game. They lost to Louisville. Notre Dame beat them up pretty well. And then, of course, they beat NC State and Miami. I think Georgia Tech keeps it close. And I just don't see – Georgia's favored by 18. No way they win by 18.
I don't. I think
10. I'll give them 10.
I think Tech keeps it close.
Closer than 10.
Tech's not a bad team. I mean, they're not great. They're 7-4.
They're very competitive.
And Georgia. What has Georgia outside of their just blowout win over Ole Miss? I think or
Texas. They blew out Texas. You can't forget about that. They blew out Clemson, right? That
was the first game.
You're focused on this Kentucky barely beating Kentucky.
Yes.
Like, you're just so focused on that, but
they barely beat Kentucky. They were tied.
Auburn pretty well.
They were tied. Auburn. They were tied with Florida late. Florida's playing better now. I get it, but
Florida's playing really well.
Florida, they're not confusing Florida for a playoff team right now. I think Georgia Tech keeps it close. I think Georgia wins. I think 18's crazy.
18's a little high. I mean, Georgia beat Tennessee pretty well too, so they have some decent wins. But no, I don't think 18's too much. I'm going to give them 10.
Okay,
Georgia, but a fun game to watch. Watch that game.
Tennessee goes to Vanderbilt. I mean, that Vanderbilt beat Bama at Vanderbilt, and they lost by 3 to Texas. Since then, Vanderbilt they've been competitive, but they've fallen off a little bit. Tennessee, obviously, they lost to Georgia, and then I think they whipped on somebody.
Vandy, though, going to Vandy, they can't be sleeping on this game at all.
Tennessee, UTEP, that's who they whipped. UTEP, who cares?
Tennessee has to come out,
make
a statement again, because they're, again, a team that can get into this playoff. They don't need a lot of help, but they definitely can't afford a loss. They're out.
Vanderbilt is already bowl eligible, so they don't have that, but they do have a chance to ruin Tennessee's playoff chances. I think that's a lot. And then you could go back and be like, we beat Alabama and Tennessee
in the same season. Crazy. Tennessee's favored by 11. I think that's about right.
Yeah, I think it's about right. I do think Tennessee wins this game, but the thing is, Tennessee's offense has not been that impressive.
They're hot and cold.
I think Vanderbilt keeps us close, and don't be surprised in the fourth quarter if they have the ball with a chance to win it.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Yeah. All right, South Carolina goes to Clemson. We talked about this a little bit. Listen, I was ready to jump on board Clemson because they were playing really, really well after they lost to Georgia, but then Louisville handled them. pretty easily. And South Carolina is about as hot as you can get right now. Listen, Clemson's a 3-point favorite, and I think that's at home.
That's at home.
I like South Carolina in this game. I think South Carolina wins.
Yeah, that South Carolina defense is nasty, and they're going to put a lot of pressure on Clemson, and that Clemson offense struggled with Georgia's defense. I know it was the first game of the year. They could not do anything against that Georgia defense. They're going to see South Carolina defense that's just as good, if not better. South Carolina's going to win this game.
I think so. I think the times that Clemson have played good teams, they've struggled.
Yeah.
And South Carolina right now is a good team.
They're really good.
All right. Does anybody care about Illinois and Northwestern?
Nebraska, Iowa? No.
Maryland's playing Penn State. We talked about Penn State's 25-point favorite. Listen.
That's too much.
I think it is.
Penn State doesn't blow people out. They don't blow people out.
And Penn State was in a dogfight with Minnesota last week. They blew out Purdue. Purdue's awful.
Penn State does not blow teams out, except for Purdue. 25 is too much. To take Maryland with the points. I mean, maybe 20. Maybe.
I think Penn State wins this game, but Maryland has
They're not
awful. Their offense isn't awful. Like, they've thrown up – I don't think so. Let me check.
They can be competitive.
This year, Maryland scored 50. 24 against Michigan State. 27, 38, 28. Northwestern somehow held them to 10.
They put 28 up against Indiana. Indiana's defense all right.
I say they haven't been bad, but then I guess they've scored 18, 17, 13. So
18 against Oregon.
17 against Rutgers. 13 against Iowa.
Which that Iowa defense is decent.
I think 25 is too much. I think Maryland hangs with them a little bit. Penn State wins this game by double digits, but 25 is too
17,
much.
20.
Yeah, 25 is too much. Yeah. Notre Dame goes to USC. Notre Dame's a 7.5-point favorite. Listen, Notre Dame's played pretty well. They had zero trouble with Army last week. They had zero trouble with
both of them. They've been playing really well.
And they whipped Florida State. They've been playing really well. Riley Leonard played well. I still want to see him try and beat somebody really good. But what he's doing right now, he's playing well.
He's doing enough. Ever since that loss to Northern Illinois, Notre Dame has really showed up. I know neither one of us really like Notre Dame a whole lot.
No, I don't.
But they're doing their thing. It's in Southern Cal.
Yep.
I don't know if that's a factor or not. This game is always.
Southern Cal, USC had Penn State. Not Penn State.
No, they had
Penn State.
They had Penn State. They lost by 3.
They lost in overtime to them. So USC has enough talent to play with Notre Dame, but
get it done.
Obviously they're 6-5. Lincoln Riley is struggling out there a little bit.
He's got one more. If next year he doesn't turn around, I think he's in trouble.
Yeah,
I think he's in trouble. I think because Caleb Williams last year had a pretty decent year. This might be a little. They'll give him a year to rebuild. Next year he's in trouble. But Notre Dame with a loss still in the playoff, depending on what happens with the other teams.
I think so because it only gives them 2 losses, and while Northern Illinois is a bad loss, the other loss would be on the road at USC.
And they're ranked 5th. They're not going to drop.
I don't think they'll drop too far.
Okay.
Now, if USC goes out and lays it to them, then it's different. Maybe. But I think they're okay.
I think Notre Dame wins though.
Yeah, Miami. I think Miami needs to be worried going into Syracuse.
Syracuse is 8-3. I didn't realize Syracuse is just quietly out there.
Outside of Common Core throwing games. 4 interceptions in the first half against
forgetting he's there.
They're not bad.
They beat NC State.
Well, yeah, but NC State's
Pitt's not awful. They lose to Boston College, which Boston College has been competitive. But they beat UConn, they beat Cal, they beat Holy Cross, they lost to Stanford. There's some bad losses in there. Miami by 11, that's about right.
But what has Miami done that's really been impressive to you?
Other than that first week against Florida.
Right.
All the other teams.
Good job coming back with big deficits because they've done that twice.
Well, they gave up 45 to Louisville and had to come back and they scored 52. Blew out Florida State.
They were down by 25 to Cal.
Duke had the lead there for a bit, and then all of a sudden, but again, 53 to 31.
Miami, it's almost like they just forget to play offense for a little bit, and then all of a sudden they realize Cam Ward's back there. He's pretty good.
And their defense isn't good enough to do that against good teams. Their defense should be better than it is, but their defense has not been playing well. And if Cam Ward just takes plays off or series off, you can't do that against good teams. Syracuse probably doesn't win this game. Miami favored by 11. I'll take that.
I think Miami wins that game, but they should be. They can't just think they're just going to walk in this game.
No. They're going to have to play football. They're going to have to show up and play because Syracuse might fool around.
Cal goes to SMU. Cal's 6-5, but they fooled around and played with some teams. SMU's played really, really well. I think SMU takes care of business.
This is a 3:30 game on Saturday. I'm going to try to watch this because I have not watched an SMU game yet, but they've done enough. Now I'm interested. Like now I'm watching them.
I think.
Who are they?
I know this is kind of funny because it's.
Who are they?
SMU is one of those teams that's like that, not that brand name. So I don't like. You see sometimes like a Penn State or Ohio State or Michigan, whatever, kind of play down to their competition sometimes because they've just always been really good.
Right.
SMU's not always been really good. So I don't know if they're in that mentality where like, oh, we can take a week off.
No.
So I think SMU takes care of business. I think they win. And they've been impressive this year.
No, I think you're right. I think SMU believes that they still have to impress people week in, week out. And you said they're already a lock in the ACC championship, right? So
yeah,
like, but they can't afford a loss.
No, because if they lose and then lose the ACC championship game,
they're out 100%.
Yeah,
because then that's going to open up. These are scenarios that open up doors for other SEC teams like Ole Miss and Bama to sneak in. So you need SMU to get to the championship game against Miami, and maybe a 2-loss ACC champion can sneak in over Bama.
That's the only thing the ACC wants SMU and Miami to play.
Yes, because they might get 2 teams
and play a close game, and they could get. Correct. I think they get.
You almost want Miami to lose that because they're ranked higher,
right?
You know,
that's what I was about to say.
Yeah. The rankings matter.
Listen. I get where you're coming from, but if SMU or Miami only have 2 losses, one of them's in the ACC championship game, they have to get in over like a 3-loss Bama or Ole Miss, South Carolina. Right. They have to. Like they just like
because you made your conference championship game. That has to mean something.
You shouldn't be penalized for going to a conference championship game and losing.
You shouldn't.
If you only have like 1 loss, right. maybe 2 losses in one of those, but. SMU or Miami getting there with 1 loss and then losing with 2 losses, you need to put both those teams in. You need to put both those teams in.
SMU's loss is not a bad loss.
It's to BYU.
And it was a close game.
Yeah.
So it's not like they lost to Northern Illinois or something like that.
Miami's wasn't. But Miami's is Georgia
Tech, who's not
especially if Georgia Tech beats Georgia this week.
That would help Miami's case for sure.
Yeah, Miami wants Georgia Tech to win.
Oh, 100%. Because then they could lose that championship game.
Their loss looks like, okay, well, it's to a team that beat Georgia.
And Georgia be out. 100% out.
Well,
right? Unless they win the conference championship.
If they win the conference championship, they're in. And they're going to the conference championship.
Yeah. They need to lose that.
All right. The Iron Bowl, Auburn and Alabama. Alabama's 11.5-point favorite. But listen.
That's got to be high. That's too high after what happened.
When Alabama's playing in Alabama against Auburn, they seem to kind of take care of business. When it's at Auburn, weird things happen. Like just absolutely the kick six. The 4th and 31 last year.
Wildest
just
thing
absolute
ever.
Weird things happen at Auburn.
God,
but when they're at Alabama, it just seems like Alabama takes care of business. Right. And Alabama's been a different team at home. All 3 of their losses this year have come on the road. Listen, I think Bama needs to prove a point, and if they can't prove a point against Auburn, then really you shouldn't be even in the conversation.
Correct. I mean, Bama coming off the loss to Oklahoma, as bad as they gave up 257 rushing yards to Oklahoma. Like, if you're Auburn, you run the football.
Yeah.
Run the football.
Oklahoma only threw, I think, 12 passes?
I mean, they were 9 for 12 for 68 yards, and they didn't go anywhere. But they ran for 257. They had 50 rushing attempts in that game. Run the ball on Bama. Control the clock. Auburn plays defense well enough. I think Auburn can win this game. I hope Auburn wins this game. But I think you just said it. It's in Bama.
I mean, you do look at it and you're like, it would be nice to see Bama have 4 losses. And here's
the thing,
Jalen Milroe is continuing to look like maybe he's just okay.
Ever since Nick Saban has left, he hasn't.
Well, he wasn't great.
Well, he started out great.
Nick Saban did, and then Michigan just
maybe Michigan is Michigan still in his head. He can't get
he retired Nick Saban.
You're going to retire Jalen Milroe too. Bama wins because it's home, not by 11.5. Auburn, don't turn the football over and run the football on offense, and you can win this game.
Yeah. All right, Texas to Texas A&M. It is at Texas A&M. Texas is a 5.5-point favorite. Listen, Texas A&M hasn't proven that they can beat anybody good. Texas, though, has kind of come back down to earth. Like, we thought they were really good at the beginning of the year. We thought it was Texas and everybody else.
Georgia beat them.
Texas beat Arkansas last week. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, 20-10.
Right.
So
it wasn't
pretty at all. But Texas A&M in their games that they've supposed to have been good, they got hammered by South Carolina.
Auburn beat them,
and
Notre Dame
beat them.
So their losses don't look that
They're
bad.
not bad.
But their wins aren't that great. Barely beating Arkansas. Okay, they beat up on Missouri, but Missouri hasn't been that good. They only beat Mississippi State by 10, and that game was a little closer than that.
Oh wait, only by 10 now?
Only
That's
by
what
10.
That's when I said that earlier about Georgia giving them 21 points, all UMass. They won by 10.
They won by 38.
They didn't win by 38.
Yeah, they did.
It was 59-21.
It was a beatdown. That's different than winning by 10.
Okay. I think Texas wins this game, and actually, I think they win this kind of easily.
I think the 12th man plays a little bit of a factor in here early. I think Texas A&M comes out and maybe pushes Texas around early. Texas has too many guys over 4 quarters, too much. Texas wins 5.5. Their favorite. I'll give them a touchdown. They'll win that by touchdown.
All right, Kansas State plays Iowa State in a ranked game. They're both ranked.
Crazy.
Is this the least interested you've been in a ranked game ever?
Well, I mean, only person here that has anything to lose is Iowa State.
Right, because they can still make the Big 12
They can make the Big 12 championship, but they have to win out, and they're in, I believe, if they win.
Well, remember, there was
27 scenarios.
There's a bunch of scenarios.
So,
but if they win, they're in a really good shot.
They're favored by 2.5. I'm going to go K-State. I think K-State with the upset. I like K-State with the upset.
I think if you're betting on this game, you're a degenerate.
You have a problem.
Because if you think you know what you're doing with the Big 12, get out of here. Stop it.
Not with K-State and Iowa State. K-State doesn't know what they're doing.
And I don't know how it's a 51.5 point over, but would you touch it?
No.
I know.
You have no idea.
I think it's going to go under. I think it's going to go under. That's my call for this game. I think it's going to be like 20-17. I really do.
Very possible.
That's 37 points.
K-State has beat Tulane, but again, they got blown out by BYU. Beat Oklahoma State. They beat Colorado. Like, they beat Kansas, but I think Kansas was a little down. I don't think they beat Kansas today. Then they flew around and lose to Houston.
And Houston's not good.
And then they blow out Cincinnati. They lose to Arizona State in what's a close game. I have no idea what K-State team shows up, but I think the good one shows up based off of their track record. It's about time for the good one to show up.
Okay. All right. I'll say under on that game, but I'm not touching.
Absolutely not.
Oklahoma goes to LSU, right?
Oh boy.
Is it at LSU?
It's at LSU.
Listen, you have to be a little. Well, obviously, you're very happy to beat Bama.
Oh,
obviously.
Oh, super happy to beat Bama.
2 weeks ago,
we're bowl eligible.
2 weeks ago, we didn't think Oklahoma was going to be bowl eligible.
Correct.
Because they had Oklahoma and LSU. Now, here's the thing. I think they can beat LSU because I want them to beat LSU because
I know you don't like.
I don't like Brian Kelly, and I don't think LSU's all that good.
You've been saying that. They have some decent wins on their record. Oklahoma, bowl eligible. I'm happy about that. Maybe they'll come down to Florida and go see them or something like that. Although I don't know if I want to watch that.
You want to pay money to watch that?
Listen, I was dead set that they were going to lose the last 2 games, and it was not even going to be really close. And then their defense showed up, and then they ran the ball like they should run the ball against a Bama team, who still might make the playoff.
Yeah.
So my hopes have gotten up a little bit for this game, but it is in Death Valley, and LSU's favored by 6. I'm going to pick my Sooners. By 3. Sooners by 3. Low-scoring game.
I think Oklahoma can win this game. I do. I don't trust
Low-scoring game.
I don't trust LSU.
You haven't trusted LSU all year.
I haven't, and they have 4 losses now. So who was right in that one?
Well, hold on now. Hold on. Remember, Florida's not as bad as you think they are. They lost to USC. That turned out to be not such a good but they did beat South Carolina.
They should have lost to South Carolina.
They might have should have, but they didn't. They also beat Ole Miss. Those are 2 pretty good wins. Come on, you got to admit they're pretty good wins. They lose to Bama bad. They lose to Texas A&M, and they lose to Florida. I don't think their losses. I think their wins are about as impressive as their losses, right? No, okay. I know you're not a big fan.
I'm not.
And I'm glad you're rooting for my Sooners.
I am rooting for your Sooners.
I'm rooting for them too, and I think they're going to pull it off. Close though.
All right.
It's ugly.
The game, Michigan, Ohio State. Michigan's won 3 straight against them. If they win a 4th straight, then Ryan Day might not have a job at the end of the day.
Correct. Ryan Day's out if he loses to Michigan this year.
Michigan is coming off their best game of the year. Granted, it was against Northwestern. But I will say this. This is the stretch that maybe kind of – it's weird to say flip their season because it's right at the end of the season and they're still 6-5. They were up 10-3 on Northwestern. Northwestern hit a big play and were driving to tie the game at the end of the half. They held them to a field goal, and then they went down, scored a touchdown, and go up 17-6. And then they just laid it on them in the second half. They won 50-6. I get it. It's Northwestern, but Michigan hasn't looked at all like an offense that could do that. Now, Ohio State's defense is a much different story.
A little bit better.
But Michigan's defense looked better, too. Ohio State's a 19.5-point favorite now. I think they opened at 23.5, so it's kind of dropped a little bit. It is at Ohio State. Ohio State scores quickly. They can score quickly. Michigan in the last 3 years, now it's a different defense, has forced Ohio State to drive down the field consistently, and Ohio State hasn't proven to do that.
Will Howard can do it.
C.J.
Stroud can do it.
I'm weirdly optimistic about Michigan's chances to keep this close. I'm not saying they're going to win. It would be one of the funniest things ever if Michigan wins this year because
Ryan Day's fired if he loses this.
This is Ohio State. It's like if they can't do it now, then Michigan's got that little thing over Ryan Day. And if Day loses this game, I don't know if Ohio State will want to fire him, but I think the fans are going to be like, you need to fire him.
The boosters. If you lose 4 in a row to Michigan, now Michigan's been good the last few years. Michigan's down this year.
Right.
If you lose this one at home, after coming off a big win against Indiana, 4 in a row to Michigan, you're gone. You're gone.
And it keeps them out of the Big Ten championship game. Well, probably. Because Penn State and Indiana are not both losing.
Right. Michigan, listen, you just watched Oklahoma beat up a pretty good Alabama team who only had 2 losses and was in the play, ranked number 8. And they only scored 3 points against Oklahoma. We've talked all year how Michigan and Oklahoma are pretty similar teams, it looks like. They can't protect their quarterback. Their offense is kind of rough. Michigan, do what works. Don't give up big plays, right? Because Ohio State has 2 really good wide receivers, Jeremiah Smith and then a Buka kid, which Indiana had trouble with all day long.
Yeah.
Don't give up big plays to those guys. Make them drive the field. Will Howard's not going to win them a game. Keep it close and run the football against them. You can win this game.
Can they run the football enough? And what they need to do with Davis Warren is he's looked better. They can't go 3 and out. They need to sustain drives, even if they don't score.
Correct.
They need to sustain drives
position
and keep Ohio State's offense off the field. Yeah. If they do that, they have a shot to keep it close. The other thing is Michigan's run defense is decent. It's not as good as it's been, but it's decent. And
Mason Graham's still out there.
They have Judkins and Henderson out there. So, Ohio State has a lot of weapons. I'm not saying Michigan's going to win this game. I think they can. I think it's going to be closer than people think. I don't think it's going to be. Listen, it might end up being 20. It could at the end.
That's a lot.
I just don't think it's going to be a blowout like some of these Ohio State fans think they are. And like I said, if Michigan wins this year, oh my God, I will be.
You're going to jump in
happy.
Cold, freezing pool again.
I've done that before.
I know you did that a few years ago. Listen, Ohio State against Indiana last week only rushed for 115 yards on 29 attempts.
Yeah.
Michigan has, I would say, just as good a rush defense, if not better than Indiana. Indiana's problem was they gave up 201 passing yards and gave up big plays.
Well, they gave up they fumbled they threw a punt over. They snapped the punt over the guy's head and they give up a punt return. If Indiana doesn't do that, they're in the game. But now they didn't do much on offense. That was the problem.
Michigan has to run the ball good.
They have to run the ball. They have to find a way. Yep. And they've been able to do that against Ohio State the last 3 years. So can they do it this year with their offensive line? I don't know. I'm not entirely optimistic about this game, but I am weirdly optimistic that they keep it close.
Will Howard cannot win Ohio State a game. We've talked about that 1,000 times. We saw it happen against Oregon. He basically, I'm not going to say lost the game, but kind of didn't win the game for sure. He can't win that game. Get yourself in a position where you're not down 2 scores, and Michigan can win.
Well, here's the thing, too, is if Michigan's close in the fourth quarter, all the pressure's on the Ohio State because nobody's expecting Michigan to win this game.
And Will Howard's not the guy.
He's not the guy. I don't think he is.
C.J. Stroud can't beat Michigan. You think Will Howard's going to?
I hope so. I hope that's right.
I do too. I don't want to see Ohio State fooling around. I know they'll probably still make the playoff.
All right, we've talked a lot about college football, and it's going to be a great weekend. Let's just we don't have a whole lot of time, but let's talk the NFL just for a minute. Can my Bears figure it out? What is going on with them?
They have been part of 2 or 3 of the most ridiculous close games that I've seen. It goes back to that Washington game. Doesn't it? It goes back to the Washington game where you think they're going to start getting on a roll, and that crazy stuff happens. They're losing to the Lions by kind of a decent amount, and you're thinking, okay, this game's over. Next thing you know, they score a touchdown. Next thing you know, they're back in this game. They have a chance to tie this thing up.
They were 4-2 and had won, I think, 3 games in a row going into the bye. They went into the bye. Me and my cousin, he's a big Bears fan too. We talked about it. It's kind of strange that we're missing the Bears football this week because normally it's oh, thank God it's a bye, we can't lose. But then the Hail Mary happens. We would have been the Bears would have been 5-2. Then they played bad against the Cardinals and Patriots. Okay. Then they have the Packers beat, blocked field goal. Then they had that crazy comeback against the Vikings, get the onside kick.
Yes.
They get the ball to
They
start
get the
overtime,
ball.
and Caleb Williams, who I think has played really, really well,
He's going to be
took
fine.
one of the worst sacks I've ever seen in my life. Like, he had forever and a day, and then the guy broke through, and he just kind of tried to juke him and get sacked. And then against the Lions, they are in field goal range, but a penalty. And then he takes a sack again, and they don't call a timeout. And they just
let the clock run off.
Let it run off. And it's just like, what is going on?
So I saw a stat yesterday. The game is Caleb Williams has been sacked more times than any other quarterback.
Yeah.
You made the comment that he held the ball too long. Is the offensive line that bad, or is he just not making good decisions?
The offensive line has not been good.
Right.
It's a combination.
Okay.
He's getting rid of the ball quicker now, and that's why he's been more successful. But he still holds the ball too long on some occasions. So I don't know. Like, I think the Bears are a decent team, but they just need to get a good coach in there. Like, Matt Eberflus is just not
the guy.
I can't believe he still has a job right now. The only difference is I think the Bears are loyal to their coaches and they don't fire guys in the middle of the season.
True.
That's it. That's the only reason, because.
And who are you going to go get, though? Like, that's the other option.
That's true.
Like, what else?
Well, my son asked me, he goes, if they fire him, would you want Bill Belichick? And I was like, I don't want Bill Belichick.
I think
he's a really good coach, but I think he's done. Well, I don't know if he's done, but it's just, I don't think you want to bring in this old coach with Caleb Williams. I don't, he's not a 10-year guy.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Not that most guys are anymore. You're not the Pittsburgh Steelers who've had 3 coaches since 1954 or whatever it is. But they got to be better. But yeah, I don't know.
Your Bears, I think the Washington game was like this turning point of just bad things to go on. That play, the blocked field goal to win that game, losing to the Patriots for some unknown reason, and then just poor clock management at the end.
I mean, the Bears realistically should have 3 more wins, and that would have put them at 7-5, and that they're in the playoffs.
And they're in one of the toughest divisions.
And the thing is they have statistically the hardest remaining schedule. The rest of the schedule now is 49ers, Vikings, Lions, Packers.
Jesus.
And Seahawks. Seahawks are in there, which the Seahawks
are good.
In their division.
Yes. The Seahawks are looking good. I mean, they're 6-5, but still. But that division's super tough. The Lions are a Super Bowl team, right? And the Bears had a chance to tie it up.
Bears had the Packers, Vikings, and Lions all in a position to beat them.
And Washington.
And they're arguably, I don't think it's arguably, I think the NFC North is by far the best conference and division in the league.
Top to bottom, for sure.
Top to bottom.
Because the Bears are at the bottom.
Yeah.
And they can fool around and beat almost anybody. Right. They've shown that.
Right.
And then you got Packers, Vikings, and Lions, who nobody wants to deal with any of those teams right now.
I mean, the Lions right now are 11-1, and they're still only a game up in their division.
That's what's crazy. That's insane.
And the Packers only have 3 losses, I think.
Yeah. Minnesota's 9-2. Packers are 9-3.
Your top 3 teams have a combined 6 losses.
There is only 1, 2, 3 other teams that have 2 losses or less.
The Chiefs, the Bills, and
no. Pittsburgh has 3 losses. So no, just those. There's only 2 other teams with 2 losses or less, and you got 2 of them, 2 sitting in that one division.
Yeah, so there's 4 teams total that have 2 or fewer losses. 2 of them.
Right. And then the other team only has 3 losses. Which, if you go through, there's only a handful of couple other teams out there that have 3 losses.
And the Bears almost beat all of them.
The Bears are the worst team in the best division. Put them in the freaking West.
The South?
Put them in the South or the West. They're cruising.
They're probably beating those teams.
Oh, for sure. They're beating New Orleans. They're beating Carolina. Right? Like, they're going to beat the Niners.
They should.
They're going to beat the Niners.
Especially if Brock Purdy's not back.
The Seahawks, they might be able to beat the Seahawks. And then if you can sneak a win, maybe with the Packers or somebody in there.
I mean, they'd have to win out to be 9-8 to make the playoffs, which is highly unlikely because, their only hope is maybe – but then again, the Lions can't – like, the Eagles have – wait, the Eagles have 2 losses? The Eagles might have 2 losses too.
No, Eagles have 2 losses.
Okay. So, the Lions can't afford to rest right now. So that I was going to say that'd be the only thing is the Bears get the Lions and they're resting people. But the Bears play the Lions in the second to last week anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, the NFL's it's close. Like there's a lot of divisions out there that are really, really close. I mean, even like you said, the Lions with 1 loss are barely winning their division.
Yeah. I think I still like the Bills in the AFC. I'm not a Bills fan.
The Chiefs are always going to be.
I'm not a Bills fan, but I would love to see the Bills This was my pick last year: the Bills and the Lions in the Super Bowl.
One of those cities,
because one of them gets a Super Bowl.
One of those cities is burning to the ground.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Probably.
My gosh.
Probably Detroit,
dude.
They've been bad for so long. The Bills at least had a chance.
If the Bills and Detroit make it to the Super Bowl, it might be the highest rated Super Bowl ever.
Oh, for sure.
Ever.
For sure. And I would want to see Detroit win because...
And I would want to see the prices of those Super Bowl tickets.
My gosh.
Just stupid.
Crazy. At least the Bills had had success.
Right. Somewhere in 4 in a row. They went to Super Bowls 4 times in a row.
Detroit
didn't win a single one.
Detroit barely makes the playoffs.
Detroit's never been in the Super Bowl. Never been in the Super Bowl. I think they've only been in 2 NFC championship games, and one of them was last year.
Detroit would burn to the ground.
It would burn. And
that's fine.
And there would be no tables left in Buffalo.
No.
Because they jumped through them.
Oh, man. Now my Raiders got the Chiefs today, Friday, Black Friday at 3 p.m. It's a few hours from now. I'll turn it on.
Does it really matter, Eddie?
No.
Why didn't you guys go sign Daniel Jones? I thought the Raiders might go get Daniel Jones.
I was surprised they didn't.
Daniel Jones probably like, no, I want to play for.
He did say that. He wanted to play for a team that has a chance, so he went to the Vikings.
Yeah.
So him and Sam Darnold, who are literally
the same person.
What are you doing playing?
I tell you what. Justin Jefferson would probably make Daniel Jones a really good quarterback.
Is that what's happening over there in Minnesota?
I mean, Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold.
All of a sudden, I can't say his name. Has looked really good.
I want to see Daniel Jones play and watch him throw up 300 yards and 3 touchdowns.
He probably can.
To Justin Jefferson.
He can. And Addison's played really well.
That's true.
And then Aaron Jones is a running back. I mean, it's a good team.
They are a good team. Yeah. And coaching might be a factor too.
Yeah, the coach is good. I like that coach.
Sometimes you wonder how much coaching is a factor. Like guys like
especially the pros.
Yeah,
because you're like, do they really matter? Do they really listen to them?
I think they look at Baker Mayfield.
That's true.
Look at Sam Darnold. Yeah. Like the guys that were not anything at their other teams go on and be successful somewhere else. You got to.
I mean, you got to think about it too, because like the Texans were awful, and then they got good when
they got Bryce Young in there,
or another coach,
or CJ Stroud.
No, Bryce Marco. No, he's at the Titans or something. Or no, I don't know.
Get a different coach.
Yeah,
you bring in a different coach. It does.
I hope that happens with the Bears because they need it.
They just don't know who you're going to get.
Golly, man. Like it's painful watching the Bears right now. Like it's just like it's kind of like, okay, cool, we're playing with these good teams. Oh, how are we going to screw this one up?
Right.
On my bingo card yesterday, it wasn't we're going to let the clock run out and not call timeout. That wasn't on my bingo card.
It was on nobody's. You're going to leave a timeout on the board? What are we doing? Just call timeout and kick a 65-yarder. Just try it. Try it. Or throw a Hail Mary. Something. But you just let it expire. What are we doing?
I mean, they did get a pass off, but it was a haphazard. It
was bad. It was so bad.
I don't know. Listen, we'll get more into the NFL, but with the end of the college football season, I think that's definitely
priority for sure.
We'll get back next week after some of this dust settles, and then we'll have all the championship games set. They haven't played yet, but we'll know the matchups, and maybe we'll have a little clearer picture on who's going to make the playoff next week.
It's going to get much clearer.
And if Michigan upsets the Buckeyes, we will play Hail to the Victors to start off our
100%.
Yeah, 100%. So go Sooners over the Tigers. Go Blue over the Buckeyes, and we will be back next week. Until then, I'm Adam.
I'm Terry. Thanks for listening.